talking. Excuse me, I have to get my grandson.
Sounds good.
Hayden,
Okay.
please go out and close the door. Yes, you may take window number 1. That's
All right, I just clicked record, so we're recording. So somebody gets to call the meeting to order. That's all you have to do.
So
I call the meeting to order at 3:37. Sorry, Laura.
No, that's fine. Do it.
The curriculum committee meeting.
All right, so it's December 1st, and we are in COVID land. So just wanted to kind of bring the committee together and talk about process. Really, the only thing that's on the agenda today is really process planning, and that was pretty specific because this has not been done in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think the curriculum work that was done in Willington years and years and years ago was basically just to adopt standards. Laura, you might have been part of that when Common Core hit. Really the standards were adopted, and there was some general curriculum work, but it wasn't really specific. And it was understanding by design, which as educators, you probably know what understanding by design is, through that reverse planning process. And I would say that because this has not been done and approved by the board in years, there's a lot of work to do. And we know there's a lot of work to do. So we have the next generation science standards, we have the Common Core, we have the Connecticut social studies frameworks. I'm not even going to go into the unified arts at this point in time. I think it's important for a few things, because this has not been done in many years at the approval process level. There has been some work done at obviously the school level, and kind of what's been internally adopted curriculum wise has not necessarily made it to the board for adoption. And we had laid out a plan a while back, whoever was on curriculum committee, and then it kind of fell off with one of our people taking a different position, Erica Bouchard for math, and just trying to figure out good time frame and way to do this. So I think it's important today, and I don't want to monopolize this conversation. I think it's important today. I wanted to share a few things. We've hired people to do this in the past, and it's not resulted in outcomes that I would say created change. Meaning that we like autonomy in Willington. Autonomy is a good thing, but we also need scope and sequence that's consistent. People know it's taught when. That's in the standards. The teachers know the standards. I also am going to say that I'm not a big program person. I don't believe programs are the way to go from the standpoint of we are only going to do X program because it says Common Core aligned on it. I don't believe in that, because if we look at students, it's not the way we teach. That curriculum may work for one student, that resource may work for one group of students, but not another. And so I kind of give you the lay of the land of the work that was done, and specifically in math and ELA. The last conversations we had were really around creating a workshop model. And within that workshop model, using the resources that were free to us, that were good resources. Engage New York is a great math resource. We've written a lot of changes around that. We've pulled in other resources. And then the language arts portion, we've got the Readers and Writers Workshop, but we've also pulled in other resources. So there's also been some things out there saying Readers and Writers Workshop is not science driven, which there are concepts within it that are absolutely science driven. It's just that you have to make sure you infuse them in how you build them. So kind of a short spiel to start this conversation is, I think our teachers, all of our teachers know what the standards are. It's making them come to life with some consistency, providing consistency across, a grade level, and meeting student needs, right? And I think as educators, you probably all have experience with this. The outcomes, I'm not sure if hiring an outside person to come in and help with some of this is the best thing. However, it's also, you have to remember that we don't have curriculum directors. We pay a small stipend for a year, and those people only work a certain number of hours. We were, and Laura, just for your, and maybe you all haven't heard this, we were, when I started this process as superintendent, we were basically, actually it was even before that. It was when Jackie was here. We were writing curriculum on PD days. That's how we were doing it. And we were going to finish in the year 2050. It was just not going to, there was not enough time. People couldn't devote enough of their, typical day to do this. We actually, quote unquote, locked Kristen Stevens and Erica Bouchard in my office in the conference room for a couple months to get a lot of writing done. They got a lot of stuff done. It's not been approved yet, but there's steps that have been taken. But it was just them writing because someone had to do a lot of the legwork. But for buy-in, that's not helpful. So, it's the purpose of this, and all the research shows, if you just write it, one person, you put it on a shelf, it's not going to make change, right? It's not going to result in change. So we need teacher buy-in as part of this process. And I'm hoping that this is not a 3-month, 6-month process. This is probably a 5-year process for all curriculum. And then we need to put something in place that is a constant revision timeline, because it doesn't exist right now. I'm going to share, I'm going to try and share my screen for a second, and I'll show you. I don't see this as a problem, but I think it's making it come to life. This is your policy.
Sorry.
Can you do a thumbs up and show me if you see it?
Yep.
Okay. So your policy is really generic, which is fine. It doesn't talk about a revision process. It just makes some general statements about how to do it. This is fine, but I feel like we might need to, and I don't want to write an administrative reg, which would be on me, because I'm not sure that's the right way to go either. I just want to make sure we agree and the curriculum committee agrees on the best way to move forward. Because if we don't agree on it and we don't kind of check those boxes, this process is just not going to be efficient. It's not going to happen. And so we need to make sure we're on the same page as that. So I just, some of the things that are in here are outdated. I think this was last updated in 2016. But, this standard scope and sequence, that's the standards. I mean, the standards show what's supposed to happen at every grade level, all the way up with Common Core at least. And actually most national standards have that all the way through. It doesn't tell you what to teach though, or how to teach it. And that's the intent of what we need to get into the curriculum, okay? And I'm going to say one more thing and then I'm going to be quiet. So kind of my beliefs, and I think this is important for you to know. I think that we need everybody involved. One person can be a primary writer, but our education staff and our administrators need to be part of this process. And the BOE needs to be part of the process, and everybody needs to know their role. I think one of the things that's sometimes unclear with boards of ed especially is, what is your role in curriculum? It's not in the writing process. It's in the approval process. And what does that look like? And we need to identify that for the remainder of the board and for us. Because I think if we don't identify what it looks like for each of those groups, maybe there's a key person, that key person is sharing on a monthly basis with different grade levels. That's being reported back to the curriculum, committee. That document the policy I just showed you says that there's a district curriculum committee that then reports and gives the information to the Board of Ed. Typically, the Board of Ed doesn't have a bunch of teachers on it, right? And they rubber stamp things, but I think your input's going to be important to get to that next step. What I don't want to have happen is have the board drive and change, though, the work that's been done prior to it getting to them. That doesn't help, because people won't engage in the process if it's changed. But I think it's important for the board to have feedback leading up to that. All right. the work that has been done in the changes was not done in the understanding by design layout, because it was a bad experience by all staff that have been here for a while. It didn't work out. They were frustrated by it, and it was kind of like, here you go. And so there's a bad taste in their mouth because of it. So we try to adjust from that. Second thing is, as far as the process goes, we need training. This may take some dollars. There needs to be ongoing review. We need to have training for administrators of how to implement and support. We need a clear timeline for what curriculum when. And then my last comment is, it's got to be electronic. It has to be electronic and accessible. And it's got to allow for staff to be able to provide feedback as they teach it. So it's a living, breathing document, because otherwise, again, it sits on a shelf and people are going to close their door and do what they want. So that's kind of my opening spiel. I'm not sure if the first thing you want to tackle is, any of those things, or you just want to share your thoughts. And I'm going to unmute you if you want, just because. Hold on one second. Oh.
I have to unmute myself. I muted myself because of noise I hear.
That's fine. That's fine. I already warned my kids here. I'm like, hey, keep it down the hallway.
Then the phone rings, right?
It's the way it goes. It's COVID life and meetings on Zoom. So, I mean, I just gave you a lot of my thoughts and kind of where to go. And this is meant to be kind of big picture, and why I named this process planning as a meeting. But, what are your thoughts and on any of the items I just shared?
Well, Phil, I remember last year, is there some of the work that Erica and Kristen did, is that ready to come to review, or are we going back to the beginning, I guess? And
They're definitely, good question. They're not going to go back to the beginning. I think one of the things that they realized from when they sat down and were kind of quote unquote locked in the conference room for 3 months, is they wrote a lot of great stuff. They used a lot of great resources. They inputted a lot of important information. They have something written. The issue is it hasn't received feedback. They collected some feedback along the way. It wasn't consistent. Some teams felt like, just write it and give it to me, while other teams felt like, I want to have a piece in this, and I want to have some of that writing process, which is not always feasible. Mm-hmm. In a big district, you don't get to do that. And you probably have a curriculum director that's done that. So they're not starting from scratch, but I do think part of this process for us could say, hey, we want to make sure that the teachers are provided an opportunity to give feedback on what has been written. Obviously those two people, Kristen and Erica, can absolutely defend what they've written. They're experts in their field, no question about it. And even since the time that they, specifically Kristen, even since the time that she sat down and did a bunch of writing, things have changed. With Readers and Writers Workshop and some of the chronological awareness, that some of the things that were missing from Readers and Writers Workshop, we had already plugged in. But we need to make sure teachers see that and have feedback on it. And what's always hard about curriculum is we want them to experience it, and you could approve it, right? And then as long as we're coming back to it. And if you write that into your document, into your plan, to say, look, in the first year, we're going to approve ELA. We realize the teachers have not had the opportunity to live it yet or apply all of it. But in the second year, it's going to be data collection and feedback. And then in year 3, we'll have any adjustments and changes that need to be made. And that's why I say it's a multi-year process that needs to keep going. And so, no, they're not going to start back from scratch. I don't think that's the right thing to do, because they're tied to the standards.
I was hoping you would say that, because I feel like, I know they worked a lot. We just didn't, for multiple reasons, we never got to have a presentation or, And it's
hard because they have their jobs. I mean, as Kristen's a coach and Erica is now a math teacher, so it's got to happen outside their days, or think about the times where we're struggling with substitute teachers. We want these people to have coverage so they can go and meet with teams, and that's not easy. We were doing, and again, background of this, we were basically hiring 3 subs a day. We would set certain days. We would hire 3 subs for a day. And Erica would have a group, 3 teachers, so we'll call it 3 first grade teachers for half the day, and do PD with them and talk about curriculum and share things and get some feedback. And then those 3 teachers would go back to their classrooms, and the second half of the day would be second grade. And it was an easier way to build it. But with a sub shortage, we would have these things planned, and then no subs, and we'd have to cancel the day. So there's been some things that have just tied us up, and it's a process we've wanted to light a fire, but it's always a bucket of water being thrown on it.
Mm-hmm. Phil, I would add input to feedback. That teachers, maybe step 1 would be brainstorming with teachers, then writing curriculum and then going back for feedback. Just a thought.
But if you do that, you're going backwards and exactly what Tracy
What we've
just
already
asked.
done, yeah. But I think there has been input from teachers into what has been. Have all of the workshops been incorporated into the curricula, I guess I should say?
So not necessarily. Math is definitely written as a workshop. I don't know if it's implementation and what's written in right now might be 2 different things, because we haven't had the training either. We've done some training on workshop model. It's more math and ELA at this point in time. Science could be some of the workshop model, but again, science they are hands-on. It's a different way of learning. And so the social studies standards are very different. That I will say has changed that, particularly at the elementary level, has changed how they're teaching social studies. But it's like social studies, and Tracy, this is one of your pet peeves, I know. Science a quarter, social studies a quarter. Science a quarter, social studies a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
The intent
It's still messing with these kids.
I know. And the intent of this, so there's only so many hours in the day, but the intent in science, it has the alignment in it, written in it with math. It's written into it.
Both Common Core to ELA too.
Correct. And so they did the best they could with the time they had to show the integration. But again, that takes training. It takes people throwing out some units they've always done and starting new and with new learning and providing the professional development. And that's why this is such a process. You just can't snap your fingers. I've always done it that way. Well, that's good, but this is the way we need to.
We grow and learn and change.
Right.
Well, and I'm not as familiar with social studies, but I know that science was a whole new way of thinking. And
It sure
teaching
is.
had been in the past. It was, 180 degrees
Yep.
from the way some people were teaching it.
Yeah. And the next gen standards I think they're really well done. The good thing that they provided is they actually provided a lot of the ways to teach it and the lessons to go along with it. We actually purchased a lot of those through CREC, and they're solid. We haven't approved them though. We haven't approved that curriculum. So there's some work that's been done, and listen, I'd love to approve this all tomorrow, but it takes a lot of work to get to that point for board approval. We were part of the social studies rewrite in the state. UConn I think they had $1 million grant. It was huge. And we were connected with Mansfield. They came in and we provided feedback on the social studies standards. So we had a big part in that. And that's changed some things, but we still have some work to do. The end goal for us should be, these things should be on the website. These things should be able to be viewed by a brand new teacher. Here is the curriculum, whether you meet with your team or not. And I'm not so sure either of those things are in place right now.
So just so I kind of have a handle on what we're doing here. So this curriculum review process, what we're trying to accomplish as the Board of Ed Curriculum Committee is figuring out what the next steps are in the whole curriculum review process. So you've got some curriculum that has been written, has never been approved, has varying levels of buy-in from teachers. And we have to kind of say, so what is our next step in this? And so I'm wondering, like, here we are in December. Is it like, what are we going to do over the spring semester to have in place for the teachers to start in the fall? Like, I guess I'm kind of wondering what is our
check, Laura.
here? Okay.
Yeah. And this is why I say a 5-year plan, because it has to be realistic. I gave Erica and Kristen a plan. They agreed on it. And then when they were, a few weeks in, they were like, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's just so much work to be done. And with the other things of your job, it's not realistic. And so they backed down. I said, at some point, we have to stick to a timeline and we have to hold ourselves accountable for it. And I'm okay doing that. I can hold them accountable. I can hold myself accountable. But I think we need a big picture, and it has to be realistic. You can't get through every curriculum we have in a year. You can't. You just won't.
It's not gonna happen.
It won't be meaningful. It won't be real.
So right now, it sounds to me like there's been a lot of work done on the math and ELA Common Core, that you've got it written. It's never been approved.
Correct.
And what we're looking at is basically us looking at it and approving it so that teachers will implement it and kind of figure out how it works. Because like you said, you can read through it, but until you try to teach it,
right,
you don't really know. So a year of them trying it out and then reviewing that. So like that would be year 1, like initial implementation, and then get feedback from the teachers from the year of initial implementation, and then revise right there for year 2.
That could be. It depends on how aggressive you want to be in the plan. And
this is what we're doing. Okay.
right.
And
Yeah.
we have to approve it first before it goes to the teachers.
Say that
You
again.
have to approve it first.
We have to approve it first, and then it would go to the teachers for a year of implementation.
I have a
Is that what
question.
you're saying, Laura?
Are they sort of using this curriculum now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they're, and
But it's never been approved.
which is good because they're at the feedback stage. They're at the stage of we're trying this and this is working. That's not.
I will say though, because of the autonomy that we allow,
Mhm.
they're still tweaking things, and I think that's good and it's bad. It's good and it's bad, and the reason why is because if you choose a different way to teach it, then they were down to writing lessons for every unit for every day, and you might as well just buy a program and follow a book at that point. We want to provide autonomy, but this is a big question too, is to what level, to what depth do you want to have approved curriculum at the BOE level on our website? I don't need to see every lesson. I don't think that's an expectation.
And it shouldn't be the same every year. You have different children every year.
Correct. And so those are, these are big questions.
Yeah.
And I think that, yes, they've lived some and they're teaching some now, but there's also an expectation that, or it's not even an expectation. It's that, look, it's not been approved yet. So we're not pushing it.
Not held to it.
Right. Once it's approved, and this is the point of the follow through. Look, I identified a better way, and I have the autonomy to change my lessons, and that's what I've done. I'm still meeting the standard. But again, the standard's not the curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
That's the gray. And I really am an advocate for gray. I am, because I think teachers are artists from the standpoint of you just find creative ways to get the learning out there. But we also need to make sure that teachers that don't have that capability have a solid resource.
I kind of see a curriculum as sort of an outline, of, this is the goal and here are the sub things that need to be taught under that. More an organization of skills, that you're teaching, and content, not so much the lessons, that's kind of up to the teachers and the coaches and the But I think from our perspective, from our involvement, I think the outline of what will be taught at each grade level, to me, would be the curriculum. That's my own perception.
I said I've always kind of I'm an advocate of the gray also. I think teachers are instructional experts. This is what they do. They have to have that autonomy to change the way they present that information depending upon the students. I've kind of always thought of curriculum as a menu. It's like, here are the standards we need to reach, and here are like a number of different activities, ways of teaching it that a teacher can choose depending upon, you know, who she has or he has in the classroom that year. So I mean, that's kind of,
Yep.
and that's not coming from me, the Eastern research. That comes from me, the teacher, who always kind of viewed it that way, that I wanted lots of options, and each year I might go a different way depending upon my students.
Let me share. So this is a snapshot. I think I can present this. I can. This is the kind of the where we went for some. We were trying to have a consistent layout. Okay, and so we, for the most part, have a similar layout. So this is an example of math. The standards are written there for what this, you know, what's expected. The science connections are written into this. You know, what actually stands for mathematical practice are put in there. The goals of the unit are in there, and then there's a bunch of teacher resources, and these would all be, they were linking things, and which was great, but to keep up with the links was crazy. It was a ton of work. And then they started writing sessions. So, you know, as you, and this one's not linked because it's a presentation, but you know, you get the sense of what's there. They had some of the questions, some of the discourse and writing that could be done, and then what the teacher does and what the student does. So they literally, if you see this, the support materials, they put in a ton, and it was all scaffolded. Again, for the person that doesn't need this.
Right, but for the new teacher coming in, it's
there. So this is the issue with this is huge. I mean, it's basically a 2-page document for one unit.
Yeah.
And just the number of links in here. I mean, they were tying research to it. They have the unit assessments, which I think are really important as well. Again, how do we get all of those things and feedback and direction? Is that framework what you see there, what you saw? That's what I showed the curriculum committee, and that Eric and Kristen have shown something like that in the past. But consistent, right? We want something that's consistent, whether you're in science or social studies or math. We want some consistency of look. So let's talk timeline. I mean, what's realistic? What if we could, and I'm just going to start writing, and this doesn't hold us, it's not set in stone.
What are realistic goals for, now, do you have a math person now? Did Mrs. What's her name?
My own Pomo is the interventionist, but Erica is still, so we have 4 chairs. We have 4 curriculum chairs that we pay stipends to, and these are the types of things that they work on, and they engage the teams. They're responsible for the budgeting. And so there's a social studies, science, ELA, and math. And Erica is still the curriculum person for math, which is good. And we want that. We have some great consistency in those people. It's just a matter of the next steps and how quickly to approve things, and to what level. And part of this is me asking you, because when it gets to the board level, I can't be the one saying, please just hit the rubber stamp. Right. It has to be the committee saying, look, we've approved this. This is what we're looking for. And you just need to sign off on it and trust that it's done well. I think people, including me, have a better ability to do that when you know there's a revision process. Look, and I'm putting my stamp on it, knowing that it's going to be reviewed again on this date or next year at this time. It's going to be back on our Board of Ed agenda, but this is a ton of work, and it's a ton of work. And think about just for the board level, it's a ton of work too.
Right.
You have to,
I think my first question is, what are your what's a realistic goal for your coordinators and your teachers? We can't say, oh, we want it done by the end of the year. We have to be realistic about what they're able to do in the time that they have.
I don't disagree and that matters. I think there, you know, if you want to put a push on this, we have to tie money to it this summer. We want to see these people, and I'm just interested to see if anybody's even interested in doing it this summer, because I think they're going to be cooked. I really do.
Yeah.
And what we're asking people already to do, they're cooked already. So add this on top of it. It's a lot. So I don't have a good answer to that. And I mean, obviously I would talk to them, but I think we need to give them some guidance. And so, you know, if forget, maybe we say 5 years, maybe we say 3 years, maybe year 2 is all of UA. And year 1 is, and just think about this. You're basically, if you started approving a grade level, a meeting at your BOE, I mean, you're going to be, that's like one curriculum. It's almost 10 months, you know, between what you have for pre-K and K. You've got 10 groups.
Some negative vibes coming from the board about, not all the board, but certain members of the board, education in Willington from certain I think we need to change that, and we need to change that for the constituents who are of those same thought process as these people. I'm not sure what but I just think we need to
Mute him because it made me.
There he comes again. Maybe.
All right.
Trying to figure out what's going on here.
Yep, I think you're back and moving.
Man, what is going on?
Huh. But now you're unmuted.
Yeah, all of a sudden I just got, my internet is really unstable. Sorry. Give me 1 second.
Students this morning from the store.
Oh, he's frozen again.
Yeah.
Oh, now you're moving quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Trying to remember what we were talking about when you first froze and left.
I'm still frozen on my end. I'm going to turn off my camera and see if it helps any.
Okay. I think we were talking about reasonable expectations for what a timeline would be. I also would like, I think one thing I had said just before too was to see where we are, you know, what's already been written and how much more needs to be added or tweaked, or, you know, where everyone is right now. I see from watching 2 kids go through the system, I see a very sequential curriculum, when they're learning to read and write and, so there's obviously something very good in place, the question is, where do we want to go from here with that? Modify, add to.
Well, it seems to be that there's a lot there. So as Phil suggested earlier, maybe we start with one area, ELA to start with, and then move to, a different area, math or science or social studies, and then UAs to keep the focus in one place and not be confusing ourselves or anybody who's involved in watching it. Does that?
So, Phil, of science, social studies, ELA, and math, they've worked on them all, like for an initial draft, say, like a first draft, pretty much done in a first draft sort of way, or are just math and ELA done and the other two are only partially?
So the math and ELA are probably the areas we've spent the most time on in meetings, and science. Can you hear me? Aye.
Yes.
Oh, you can't hear me. Okay, good.
You hear?
Gosh, what is going on right now? It's super windy at my house. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but science and ELA, science and social studies, they've spent some time on it. And there's been teacher input on that, but I don't know to what level. I think there was a lot of writing done and it just kind of sat. So I think if you want to pull somebody back to this level committee just to see what they've done, that would be ELA and math first.
Okay. And even have, take a look with your coordinators, which one is more developed, which one is more ready to go, and we could maybe address that one first, and then, the other one second, just to begin the process to get things going at the board level.
Yeah, and so some of this is on you from the standpoint of how hard you want to push. And I say that from the standpoint of you could easily say, we want to get all of math done next year, but to do that, that means you have a lot of reading to do, and it's going to take your promotion at board meetings to push that curriculum through to know that that's, it's your committee and that it's been approved. I think that's reasonable. I think to tackle more than one for one committee and for the board's sake would be a lot. And that's my concern, is that if we're I would like to make a reasonable commitment. And that's what I'm concerned about, is that a reasonable commitment? Am I frozen?
So
again?
I think starting with one, say we start with ELA that they've done a lot of work on, so that in this next coming year, maybe this next coming year is us going through all of it to approve it. I don't know. I kind of had this in my head and then I lost it. But say year one, we take the first subject and we're focused on that. Teachers are already supposedly teaching it. We're going through it. So that the goal by the end of year one is they've been teaching it, we've been reviewing it, so we can approve it at the end of year one, with the condition always that they will continue using revise. So year one, say, is ELA, and then year two, they're now working on, tweaking, revising, whatever, but now the focus is math. And so year two is math, and they're teaching what they've done with math. We're reviewing it so that hopefully by the end of the school year, we say, okay, they've taught it, they've been, feedback back and forth, whatever, so that we can approve it, again with that condition that these are always revisable. I agree with you completely, Phil, there. Curriculum should be a living document. You don't just finish it and it's done. You know, and then year 3, you know, science, or if it's in shape to do year 3 science, year 4 social studies, or the other way around, year 5 unified arts. And each year the others are being revised. I don't know, is that doable? And I forget sometimes. I remember the elementary teachers are teaching it all because I'm like, why can't we do them all at once? Because they're doing all subjects. That seems to me to be fairly doable as a 5-year plan. And then you're to that point of revisions each year. You know, what does need to be revised, and then I guess we have to, like, if we see that there needs to be revision, that needs to be approved. I don't know how that works with the board.
Probably like on year number 6, we check the revisions of going back to ELA. And
Right.
so every year, you know, we could focus on one.
So it becomes a 5-year process that is ongoing.
That sounds good.
And ELA is bigger because you have reading and writing and
Double
spelling, and
subject.
you know that involves a little more than math. But I would really let the people that are writing the curriculum decide which one's ready to be year
Right.
1 based on level. And Phil, you in consultation with them, you know.
Completely.
I mean,
Could
you're
we
looking
have-
at,
Oh,
you
go
know,
ahead.
if you're, sorry, Tracy, if you're looking at, and this is why I say there's a little bit of PR that goes along with this because, you know, someone's saying to you, well, social studies is last, and, you know, that's 3 years out. So you're not going to tell, what are you going to do for those 3 years? That's the devil's advocate piece. I mean, I could do a draft of with the, you know, what does 6 months look like? What does 8 months look like? What is a year? I think 8, you know, one in a small town where this is not just one person's job, right? That 12 months is probably reasonable. 8 months might be a fast timeline. It might be reasonable, but it's going to be fast. That means that the board would be approving a grade level every single month.
Right. Well, actually 9 months. Or does kindergarten have? Kindergarten.
And I would double up a couple. I mean, you could, but I was trying to do it so that to say that in 2 years, 8 months, you know, science, 8 months math, 8 months ELA, that in 24 months, in 2 years, you've got 3 of the content areas done. You know, and you're still years out. That's a little scary to people. And I say those 3 first simply because social studies is not tested at this point.
Well, I think as soon as a curricula is done, and we should take a look at it and approve it, you know, at any time.
Right. If it's beyond faster than that, you mean, Ann?
I'm sorry.
If it's faster than 8 months, you mean?
Sure, definitely.
Yeah, sure.
Definitely.
I mean,
yeah, and I don't see it being that, you know, difficult for us to approve, you know, or time consuming, or, but I think, you know, and if you have different people working on different things, then they could be happening simultaneously. I know the classroom teachers, if they're involved in all of them, that's kind of a different story. But like Laura, when you were science, you know, all of your science team could be working on that. And so
Willington, it's one person.
it's what?
One.
What? It was you?
Well, me, it was 7th and 8th grade for 4 years.
right. It's in the middle school is 2 people, right? It's a 5-6 teacher and a 7-8 teacher. And that's what's hard about this is that, you know, we're talking about a small number of people. We're not talking about 15 teachers breaking the work up and writing. We don't have that. You know, and maybe I just wanted to make sure that maybe part of this meeting for me was to make sure that we have reasonable expectations for timing for approval, but that whatever we set, we stick to, that we have regular meetings to do it, that I can hold people accountable because we know it's part of the greater timeline. I think it's easier to provide professional development so we can plan for teachers and they know what they're expected to do. Principals will know how to follow through on evaluations. I mean, there's just so many things that are tied to this. And you know, if ELA is math is, I'll put math in as year one for a second. If math is year one as approval process, and year two is ELA, math is still getting the revision cycle in year two where ELA is presenting for approval. So I could draft a couple calendars and kind of get some feedback from my curriculum folks, but I wanted to make sure you were on board with that type of direction, because it is multiple years, and that, to be honest, is a little scary to some folks. They have a hard time kind of wrapping their minds around that.
I think multiple years is much better than saying, okay, let's do all 4 this year.
Especially for the teachers.
And I think that this is where I think it's important, is that I can't be the only salesperson saying that.
Right.
I appreciate when other people say, look at reality, and I shared this with Laura before we started recording tonight. All I'm doing right now is COVID. Everything is COVID. So it's almost like I have 2 jobs right now. One is COVID and one is the rest of reality. And the reality hasn't stopped. And it's the same thing for staff. And a typical teacher, you know, they don't have that extra time. We're creating to approve curriculum. We're creating something else.
Yeah.
So.
And Phil, by the way, they are doing a spectacular job.
Much better than March.
A first grader and a fourth grader, they are in the classroom. They are in the classroom learning, engaged. It's wonderful. They're doing an
outstanding job. I can tell, Ann, because we're a couple days into it, and I can tell because I haven't gotten any nasty grams.
It is phenomenal. I am so impressed. Caden's having a hard time getting all of his assignments done, but but they are just, you know, they're together. They're, you know, there's mini lessons and everything, new materials being introduced. They're doing a phenomenal job. So
I see a lot of the same things. I'm really happy with the change, and you know, where we were in March of last year to where we are now is significant.
Yeah.
And again, some of it's training, and you know, talking about curriculum here, if they have the training, they can do these things. If we don't provide the training, it's going to be a book on a shelf.
Yeah. And that's where the extra PD days paid off.
Right.
They had a chance to work together and decide how to pull this all together.
So, and you just opened a door, Ann, by saying that. And one of the things that we have to think about is budget-wise, is do we want to consider, you know, do you want to consider as a curriculum committee recommending some, you know, additional summer hours that's not in the budget?
Yeah.
If you want to see some changes, obviously these people don't work over the summertime, they're not free. So if we want to see a bit of a push, you know, and make that part of our 3 to 5 year plan, I think we should do that, knowing that once things are approved, that goes away. You know, you don't necessarily need the intensive hours, but you know, Erica Bouchard and you know, Kristen and Teresa Smith and Katie Richling are all the folks that are doing this. They need some significant hours, and that also takes teachers in the summertime.
Yep. I was going to say the same thing. Give them the option of working with them for pay, right?
So
I think we should. I mean, I know the other districts do that, and I mean, and I participated in it, and it's different because they can devote and focus on the curriculum, not be splitting themselves in 20 directions like they are the rest of the school year, and nobody's forced to do it, but I think some people would be drawn to it because it's important, and they wouldn't mind a little extra.
Yeah. So that's step one. Do you want me to get some? Our next meeting, I can invite maybe Kristen and Erica, because they've done the most work. They can kind of share and give us some feedback. But I also, if we can meet in a reasonable amount of time, I can include that in the budget. If you want me to kind of gather some numbers and say, okay, if we were going to focus on one content area this summer, and we were going to bring in, you know, you're going to pay that one kind of leader, right? And then you're gonna bring in grade levels, all grade levels. We'll call it K-8, not pre-K. We'll call it K-8. Everybody's gonna get a half a day. I don't know. I'm just using an example. What would the cost be? Because you have to pay your teachers during that time too. $35 an hour or whatever the contractual rate is. Do you want me to see what that would cost and kind of build out a span, a range?
Yeah, I think we need that information.
Okay.
And you could
Yeah, and
even,
I think it would be helpful too if we could meet with Kristen and Erica, so we
yeah.
can hear from that, we can have an understanding of where they're at and where they need to go. And
I would rather have them start too than anybody else because they've done the most work on this, and then other people can modify from there. So that's kind of next meeting. I guess the other question is thinking, and my brain is on the calendar for 21, 22. Is this something that we want to consider half days for? Is this, for training specifically around this? Even if you add in, it doesn't mean I'm not a big fan of the every Wednesday half days. Or, it's too much on parents. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But is that something that maybe once a month we're doing that? And what do we truly get out of that? Is it worthwhile, or is...
I think you're better off with a full day every other month, because I know as a teacher, it's really hard to unwind from having taught all morning, and there's always loose ends.
Yeah.
Where if you come in fresh one day and you have had no student issues, you're just coming in fresh just to do training, curriculum work, whatever. The half days, I don't know, are
I
a
don't
little
disagree.
hard that way. And it's only a couple hours. It's 2.5 hours, 3 hours, maybe.
Yeah, at the most, it's really
You
2
just
hours. I
get-
mean, from
you
center,
just
by the time
get
dismissal
started.
was over, it was 1:30. We'd be meeting in the library, and they're checking out at 3:40. So, you've really only got a couple of hours, and your first half an hour is, here's what we're doing today, and let's recap on this, and here's your task. So your work time is minimal.
Right.
I just wanted your take on it, and
Yeah, I agree too.
the
When I
additional
was
time,
in
man. I don't know how you do the days though.
Yeah, when I was in Mansfield, we would have I don't even remember how often it happened, but we would have town-wide grade level meetings where we would do that kind of training. And that would be a whole day with substitutes in our class, that same model you were talking about
Yeah.
before.
That's by far the best model if we have subs.
Yeah.
And this is, so again, if the half day doesn't work, if you hire a building sub and you guarantee that that's what they're going to do, that's how you make it work. But it's that money as well. So
But
I was just going to say, I feel like I've been a building sub before, and I know we're conservative in Willington, or some of us are, but Coventry hired building subs this year, and it's working out well. I mean, we still, because of COVID and different things, there are days when there's numerous people out and there's no one to cover them.
yeah.
But having those building subs is really helpful for so many different reasons. Even just like our IRT today, they can float around to different places, but they're always there. And if they're not, then they help in classrooms and they help in the cafeteria.
And I don't know if we would, I mean, the cost of 3 subs could be a lot of money. I don't know if we would get that. I don't know. I mean, I build it in now. It's just the every day. It's the how quickly do you want to move and what's realistic? Because with building subs, then, if it's a Kristen or an Erica, they have their other job too. And so that means if you're doing it every day.
Yeah.
Let me talk to them and just see because I know they were frustrated with the cancellation of subs, and we have raised the rates. It's just a challenge across every district. So,
well, with the existing PD days, like you have that day in October, how many of those could you devote to this? I mean, I know you have your annual training in other areas that has to go on.
Yes, I mean, the question is really, let's just think from a grade level perspective for a second, and the amount of days. So we have we'll call them 4.5 PD days, 4 days because half a day is goals. And with those 4 days, that means if you're a grade level, you have to get through every unit for your ELA in 4 days. And that's just one grade level. And you kind of need the leader there to walk you through, you know, that's time is so precious in this, and the world doesn't stop, so we can go, hold on, let's get the curriculum set so then we can go educate students. It keeps going, and those people still have jobs. So, you know, I think summer is definitely helpful. People have to want to work. We still have to provide the training either way. And that's why I say a good curriculum is clear, and it's, you know, it's easy to navigate and has good resources in it, because then people will do it and you can follow through with them. I don't know.
Well, we could start with subs, you know, develop a budget with subs and see if we make it through the finance board, you know.
Do alternate one in the summer and then one with subs, and see which one is financially better.
Yeah, I can pull together a couple things. I mean, the subs are so inexpensive for what you get out of them. I mean, that's why we did it. I mean, just, you know, for $300 a day, you're freeing up 3 teachers, and you get a lot of work done in one day. And a half day, we found a full day was too much. We found that's why we split the half day, because the half day was just enough time. You know, from 8:30 to noon, you're flying. Your 3.5 hours of curriculum work is a lot. And then at some point, your brain just shuts down and says, okay, I can't take new information anymore. I need to move on.
Okay. So, but that 3 subs for one day, that's 1 grade level. So you have to do that.
You can get 2, right. You can get 2. So for 3
half days, or do half days. So you can 4 days, like a week, you can get through everybody.
Right. And so, you know, if you bring in 3 teachers, and it's really 4 in the summertime, you're looking at $130 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
It gets expensive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then we know the subs are cheaper. So
yeah, and that's why we would try to go that route, because the sub money was there, and it wasn't often. It was just, you know, hey, every kindergarten's going to get a half day, first grade's going to get a half day, second grade, and this is when I was there. You know, it's trying to figure that out. So,
well, you also have two things. You have the writing of the curriculum, which might be well done in the summer, and then you have the training for the teachers, the PD, about the curriculum. Is that and that could happen with the subs, or is that also the writing of the curriculum?
no, they're not really writing, they're providing some feedback. And so the model that we had implemented was, after Chris and Erica wrote, and this is, I'll speak to Erica because I know how she was doing it, is that we would stop intervention for a couple days, and we would get subs, and we would do this prior to a unit. She would then meet with each grade level for half a day, or even if it was a couple of hours, to roll out the next unit. So she'd get 3 groups through in one day. And they would then have the information for the next unit and have some information and go prior to doing it. And it's just, but the number of days you need it was a lot.
Yeah.
Let me roll out. So here's kind of a recap of the thoughts. So I think we're on the same page as far as a multi-year timeline. Let me pull together a couple of timelines. Let me schedule another meeting, get Kristen and Erica to be involved in that communication, because they've lived this. I'll do some kind of pricing of what support would look like if it was in the summertime or subs. And then the last thing, I think that was, I'm just going to write some generic identification of roles. I think that's important for everybody to see. What's the role of the superintendent? What's the role of the curriculum committee? What's the role of a grade level teacher? What's the role of the remainder of the Board of Ed? So we can see how that everyone understands where their piece of the pie fits in.
I like that.
And if we do all of those things, just looking at my notes.
can I throw out another idea?
Mhm.
Could social studies and science share year 3? Because it would probably be different people that are working on each of thuse.
We could, it depends on,
The
we may
elementary-
try this for year 1 and go math in 8 months and go, holy cow, 8 months was just not a lot, or
Right.
it was too
Right.
much. And math also might, and ELA could potentially go faster because they've done more.
Yep.
If math and science are in year 3 and they know, hey, this is coming, they're going to work along the
We've
way.
got 2 years to kind of work up. And that way we
Right.
could be on a 3-year rather than stretching out to 5.
And that's why I was trying to do, an 8-month process instead of a 12, because an 8-month process really allows for you to do 3 groups in 2 years, which is a little more palatable, I think. You know, if you could, and if you combine science and social studies, all your primary subjects are in 2 years, and then you start your UA after that, and it doesn't feel like it's.
So were you
never gonna
talking
happen.
LA and math the first year then?
So
Or no?
I'm looking at like LA or math first 8 months, and again, this is raw. I would really want their take on this.
Mhm.
8 months is fast, and the reason why is because the board would have, you could approve multiple grades in one meeting. You could approve in 8 months. You could say, hey, you know what? We're not going to approve curriculum until we have center schools done, and center with a goal of by the end of that 8 months, center schools is approved and hall schools approved. So maybe you have at month 4, where the board is approving center schools math. Month 8, you're approving hall schools math. And then the second 8 months is ELA, same kind of concept. I think there's pros and cons. There's just no right answer as far as long as you have a plan and we're following through that plan and it's a reasonable a timeline, that there's feedback and some team input on this. It's all those things. It's just that's what has to be built into this plan.
Mhm.
Well, I could throw in another wrench here.
Go for it. That's why, I mean, this is planning. That's what the purpose of the meeting was.
Mhm.
Well, I'm thinking one of the reasons to do separate years is that elementary teachers teach all 4 subjects. So, to focus on one at a time, I think is very valuable. But when you hit middle school, and I'm not sure right now, you said you've got a 5th, 6th teacher and a 7th, 8th. So is the 5th a middle school model where teachers are dedicated to a subject?
They are.
So once you hit that, the teachers are only doing one subject. There is no reason, and you've got the different curriculum people, they could be doing it all at once.
They do the curriculum for K-8 though. But I agree with you.
But if we're doing math and reading the first year, the science and social studies could be doing middle school science and social studies.
Mm-hmm.
So that we get those done. So it ends up then being the second year. So if your 8-month plan, you got ELA and then math, everybody.
Yep.
In 16 months. But at the same time, you're getting your science and social studies at the middle school done. Then that second year, going after 16 months would just be elementary science and social studies.
Yep.
I don't know if that's just too complicated, but it
No,
seems like the science and social studies people at the middle school level could be working on that right away.
Some of the challenge of that, Laura, is again being small, is
Yeah.
you need feedback from 2 people. And at the middle school it works, right? But that is, you want the lead up, you want the scope and sequence to be clear from the elementary level. I think that's in science and social studies it can be done, because it's their own islands, really. It's 2 teachers.
Right. Yeah, and NGSS at least is laid out each grade level, so scope and sequence is not an issue. I'm not familiar with the social studies framework and how that's laid out, but because otherwise, I mean, for 16 months, what are your science and social studies? They're just working on writing. I mean, and maybe they're working on writing the curriculum because they don't have it. I mean,
Yeah. So is your proposal 8 and 8 in 16 months?
I think so. 8 and 8.
And the second 8 is, we'll call ELA and middle school science and social studies.
Yes, 8 and 8 would be math and ELA and middle school science and social studies. So in that
Yep.
first 16 months, you've got quite a bit. And then the last 8 months would be elementary science and social studies. So that would be a third 8, right? To get the elementary.
Yeah.
If that's doable to do science and social studies at the same time at the elementary level. And I feel like that's a lot.
It is.
Especially like the science, teaching NGSS is really different. And I don't know how much training, your teachers have had on that. And you said the frameworks is very different. So maybe doing them together is really not the best idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you do the math or you do the LA, you'll be able to tie in and say, hey, this is how it's connected. But there are certain units that the concepts don't tie together, and it's got to be standalone. But this is the pro of doing a year approach, is that you target all of your PD that year to that.
Subject, yeah, which is great at the elementary level. But again, being a middle school science teacher, I went through a whole lot of ELA and math PD, because it always seemed like that's what we were focused on.
Yeah, which doesn't, and it could be done by groups, right? I mean, that's the intent. So in year 1, if we're doing math, it's K through 4 math. That's their target. That's all of their PD is around math.
Right.
And then 5, 6, 7, 8 is only the math teachers, and then 5, 6, 7, 8, the other teachers are focused on other things, and they can do some different work. It's like,
Or they could write their curricula during that.
I think they could be working if it's not.
they could work on.
They could be working on their curriculum, social
Yep.
studies on theirs during that PD time if it doesn't pertain. How much overlap is there? Still a lot of writing within science and social studies? Is that still a thing? You know how they were trying to marry the writing and the...
It's still involved, yeah, but I think the social studies really shifted to things that were more logical for kids to grasp onto. Willington, it's now about your local versus, I mean, some kids never have been on a Willington, never mind they're trying to learn about different continents and, different parts of the world. It's a lot of the elementary concepts are around my home, my community. I mean, that's what the elementary model is around. My town, and then my state, and then it kind of jumps from there. But it is again, it depends on what writing you want to do into it. It's you could build it project based. You could do a lot of things that are different. Okay, so you just sparked some other ideas. So I'll give you different models then. And
Okay.
Laura, I like that idea. I think it's reasonable because and again, what you just shared was year 1 K through 4 math, year 1 ELA 5 through 8, because and then the others, year 1 science and social studies could be writing in year 1.
Yep.
And the other good thing about that is that Erica's then focusing on center and Kristen's focusing on hall school in terms of the writing.
And we would just tie in an approval process tied to this timeline. So we say, hey, okay, if math year 1 is K4, and I say year 1 meaning the first 8 months, the problem is in my 8-month theory and that breakdown, it goes out the window for the 8-month plan. Because in the first 8 months, you're only addressing 5 grade levels as opposed to 9. You see what I'm saying?
Mm.
But we pick it up elsewhere, I guess.
With the 8-month plan,
Yeah, right. Flip-flop it so you pick it up. You're right.
the other thing about the 8-month plan is during the summer, we tend to take 1 month off and you know,
When does the second
I
aid-
don't see us so much approving curriculum in August, you know.
Yeah, which is okay.
If we kind of did the 8 months that school's in session, that the board is also very active, you know. And then you could invite teachers to come and they're on their work time, whereas in the summer, you know, that's,
Are you
So I-
all all on Google Docs?
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah,
Multiple,
smiling. He hates
multiple.
my-
I can
It's-
try. I don't do well with Google Docs, but I'll try. I will try.
What I'll do, I'll share. I will share a couple samples of ideas just from, you know, because I think part of this is we need feedback, right? We need feedback, but we want to see what a realistic timeline looks like, or hey, if we're going to use our 8-month model, who's in the first 8 months? When does it actually finish? How long is it really going to take to get through everything? And are we okay with the amount of time it's going to take, or is it not enough time? We need to stretch it out, or can we shrink it some based upon something else? Let me pull some of those together. So kind of a couple of models of time frame. I'll share it in a Google Doc. I'll do identification of roles. Anything you want to add in, if you want to make comments on the side. I'll figure out the curriculum hours, and then when do you want to meet again with Kristen and Erica?
Is sometime in January good? Like late January? I don't.
You want to set a date now? We can just if you give me a couple dates in January, I can bring them at least a couple, you know, an idea.
I'm pretty open until the 24th, but then classes
I'm-
start and I
yeah.
don't know what day I'm going to be having class.
I'm
Before the
I'm the same. I start back classes on the 25th.
So if we can do it before then, maybe like I don't have a calendar in front of me, but
What was the date you started, Tracy?
I think it's the week of the 24th or 5th.
Yeah, 25th
That's
is the
the
Monday.
Monday.
25th is the Monday.
I
Oh, wait,
will.
25th then.
I will email you some dates, and the reason why I was going to say let's try and pick a couple dates now, but I don't have the budget calendar yet,
Okay, yeah.
and so
If we did the second or third week there, then everybody might be back into the swing of school and have more, you know, the teacher wise. And
yeah, I'm looking at the week of January 11th as a potential.
second week. That sounds good.
I can be home at 3:30 any of those days.
That for me is just going to depend. I have a virtual conference. I will be home instead of in Salt Lake City, unfortunately. But I don't know when I'm presenting yet. They haven't put out that schedule.
And then do we need to look at that policy again and do some revision of that, or do we need to do some fact finding?
Maybe that can be
first
your
and then-
homework. It's a good comment, Tracy. Maybe that can be your homework.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mind a general policy, and I don't mind. I mean, technically, what we're doing is when we create a timeline, we're creating an administrative reg. It's just got to be general enough to say that, look, at the board the curriculum committee of the board is going to be expecting to see revisions of curriculum for ELA every 8 months, or once it's approved, every so many months.
Every year.
Yeah, right. And so
Do it like the sped up timeline to get it all done, and then every year.
right. And so, you know, I think we could easily add that in as an administrative reg afterwards. I just read the policy and see what you think. I think it's gray, which is again good, but it's also so gray that this is why we're where we are.
Can you tell me that policy number again so I can look it up, or
How about I just send it to you?
that would be
That'd be great.
wonderful, so I don't
And then Phil, the other thing was the budget implications too, different budget
Yep.
ways it would affect the budget.
So
Is there
you're,
anything else we can do, Phil? Because I feel like we're giving you more work than
Yeah.
with all that you have on you.
You definitely got more
what we
homework
can
than
do-
we did.
I think I think what will help is if I share docs and you can provide feedback as we go, that's helpful because it keeps the conversation going and I don't have to, you know, spend 3 hours prepping for something. If you can provide feedback along the way, like I'll send you the policy tonight and you can write on it and take a picture and text it back to me if you with your thoughts, whatever's easiest, or just send me an email. Don't send it to everybody, but if we're on the same Google Doc and do you all know how to put feedback in? And do you know how to make a comment on a doc?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I've been shown.
Hold on,
And I
I'll
can
just,
see if I can get my husband to help too.
so I just, oh, can you see what's on my screen now? Committee
Yes.
notes?
Yes.
Yep.
So I just made notes for tonight for myself. And if you just, so I'll give you, oh, it's paused. Resume share. You can see my screen.
Mhm.
Yep.
So if you just highlight something, Anne,
Uh-huh.
and you click this little plus on the side and add a comment, this
Okay.
is crazy. Will never happen,
In your dreams.
right? If you just make the comment, then we can all see it. And so
Oh,
I
okay.
think that will be helpful. Or if you want to make your own notes in it, I don't care. I think the easiest way to see it is if you just do this too, is just say, Laura, and make your comment. This is a better way to state this. However you want to do it, you know what I mean? Whatever, but I think if you change something, it's harder.
If you do suggestions, it shows up like that,
Yeah.
so that you know it's.
So stay on the plus side with the suggestions.
Yeah.
And that
You
way
can do
the
suggest edit.
document remains the same. Okay, yeah, I
So
could do
if we
that.
can share, then that will help me kind of keep things going and I'm not coming back to it to spend a ton of time on it.
Mhm.
Sending you the policy is easy. Getting the feedback, because the January meeting, if our goal for our January meeting is to go, okay, here's what we want to recommend to the board now, you're really making that recommendation and I don't know, the board doesn't have to approve your curriculum process. You're the committee. You're just keeping it going.
Keeping them informed.
Right. And so we would provide that update. And so if, you know, we can agree in January as to here's the timeline. Now that we know this is our timeline that we would like to try to establish, it's just a matter of setting meetings from there and keeping the board informed. That would be really beneficial. The only thing we would share with the board then, I think, is the identification of roles. And you could share the timeline too with the board, but it doesn't need approval from them because you're making the, you know, it's not like you're not voting on curriculum, you're just doing the work.
Right.
Make
Okay.
sense?
Yep.
Stop share. All right, sorry about my internet connection there for a little while. That was a little frustrating.
That's our life now too.
Yes, it is. I ran down to my kids' room and said, you need to get off your computers for a couple minutes. My daughter went, no.
Mm.
All right, so somebody just has to adjourn the meeting unless you have anything else.
Okay, I move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second.
All right, and it's 4:55. Beautiful.